In a quiet little village nestled among rolling green hills, lived an old man named Arthur. His cottage was small and cozy, filled with trinkets and memories from a long life. But of all his possessions, the one that drew the most attention was a large grandfather clock that stood silently in the corner of his living room. It was a beautiful piece, carved from dark oak, with a face of polished brass. But there was one problem. The clock was broken. Its hands were frozen at 10 minutes past 2, and its pendulum hung motionless. It hadn't chimed in decades. The villagers often teased Arthur about his silent clock. "Why do you keep that old thing, Arthur?" Mrs. Higgins, the baker, would ask whenever she delivered his bread. "It just collects dust and takes up space. You should get rid of it." Young Tom, the postman, would chuckle and say, "You could at least set the right time on it, twice a day, old man." Arthur would simply smile, a gentle, knowing smile, and pat the side of the clock. "It has its reasons for being here," he would reply softly, his voice calm and steady. "Everything has its purpose." The villagers would shake their heads, convinced the old man was just sentimental, or perhaps a little eccentric. They saw a useless piece of furniture, a relic of the past that served no function. But Arthur saw something more. He saw a friend, a silent companion that had been with him through thick and thin, a keeper of memories. He remembered the day he brought it home as a young man, its chimes filling the cottage with life. He remembered his late wife, Eleanor, polishing its wooden case until it gleamed. The clock had marked the time for countless happy moments and had stood silent through the sad ones. For Arthur, it wasn't just wood and gears. It was a part of his home, a part of his story. He would often sit in his armchair, looking at the clock, and whisper to it as if it could hear. "Don't you worry," he'd say. "They don't understand. But we know, don't we?" And in the quiet of his cottage, it felt as though the old clock understood him perfectly. He continued to dust it carefully every morning, his hands tracing the familiar carvings, his heart full of a quiet conviction that its time had not yet passed. One cool autumn afternoon, a strange, acrid smell began to drift through the village. It started faintly, like a distant bonfire, but it grew stronger and thicker with each passing minute. The sky, once a brilliant blue, began to haze over with a dark, ominous smoke. A fire had broken out in the old mill at the edge of the village. Fanned by a sudden, gusty wind, the flame spread with terrifying speed, leaping from the dry timber of the mill to the nearby storage sheds. Panic erupted. Villagers poured out of their homes, shouting and pointing at the growing column of black smoke. The volunteer fire brigade rushed to the scene, their little red truck clanging its bell, but the fire was already too powerful, too ferocious. The wind shifted direction abruptly, carrying sparks and embers toward the heart of the village. The thatched roofs of the cottages were like tinder, and within moments several were alight. The air filled with screams and the roar of the fire. In the ensuing chaos, no one thought to sound the village's main alarm bell, which was located in the town square. People were running in every direction, disoriented by the thick, blinding smoke. They couldn't see which way to go to find safety, which paths were clear and which were blocked by the advancing flames. The smoke was so dense it stung their eyes and choked their lungs, turning midday into a terrifying, murky twilight. It seemed the entire village was trapped, with no clear path to escape the inferno that was rapidly consuming their homes. Arthur was in his cottage, watching the chaos unfold from his window. His heart ached for his neighbors, for his beloved village. He felt a profound sense of helplessness as he saw the panic and confusion outside. The smoke was beginning to seep through the cracks in his own door and windows, and he knew he had to leave. But just as he turned to grab his coat, a deafening sound shattered the air. Dong, dong. It was a sound no one had heard for over 30 years. It was the sound of the old grandfather clock. Its long silent chimes rang out, clear and powerful, cutting through the roar of the fire and the cries of the panicked villagers. The sound was so unexpected, so loud, that it made everyone freeze for a moment. They looked around, bewildered, trying to locate the source of the powerful ringing. The chimes were coming from the direction of Arthur's cottage, which stood at the edge of the village, near the old eastern path that led away from the fire, up into the safety of the hills. The path was hidden by the thick smoke, but the sound of the clock acted as a beacon, a clear, audible guide. Understanding dawned on the villagers' faces. That way, follow the sound, someone shouted. The crowd turned as one and began moving toward the rhythmic chimes. The powerful, steady ringing gave them a direction, a focal point in the blinding chaos. They stumbled through the smoke, their ears leading them where their eyes could not. Men helped women, parents carried their children, and neighbors supported the elderly, all moving together toward the sound of salvation. They found the eastern path and scrambled up the hillside, away from the grasping flames. From the top of the hill, they watched in sorrow as the fire continued its rampage, but they were safe. Every single person had made it out. Later, as the fire brigade finally managed to contain the blaze, the villagers gathered, their faces smudged with soot, their eyes wide with relief and wonder. They looked down at Arthur's cottage, which had been spared by the flames. The clock had fallen silent again, its hands once more frozen at 2:10. The villagers approached the old man, their earlier mockery replaced with awe and gratitude. Mrs. Higgins, her voice trembling, said, "Arthur, your clock, it saved us. How?" Arthur stood by his doorway, looking at the crowd and then at his silent friend in the corner. A gentle smile touched his lips, the same smile he always wore when they teased him, but this time everyone understood it. He placed a hand on the old clock's wooden case, his touch full of affection and pride. "I told you," he said, his voice soft but clear, carrying to every person in the crowd. "I told you, nothing is useless. Everything has its purpose, and it just waits for its right time to show it." The villagers stood in humbled silence, finally understanding the old man's wisdom. The broken clock, a thing they had all dismissed as worthless, had found its perfect moment to be the most valuable thing in the entire village. Thank you for joining us for this story. We hope it reminds you that value can be found in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for new English stories every week. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe everything has a purpose? See you next time.